The Galactic Council was the pride of the known universe. Inside its shining crystal halls, thousands of alien species met under the light of distant stars. It was a place of peace, politics, and power. Every voice was meant to be heard there. Every world had a seat, every empire a say. But on one quiet day, a new report came before the council. It was not about trade or law, it was a warning. The speaker was a Varathi scientist, a thin creature with silver eyes and trembling hands. "There is a young species on the edge of the Orion Arm," she said. "They call themselves humans. They are primitive but dangerous." Her words echoed through the hall. A few delegates raised their heads with mild interest, others simply laughed. "Dangerous?" hissed the Sarn Dominion's ambassador. The Sarn were tall and sharp-featured, their skin like polished glass. "They are barely out of their own system. They use chemical rockets. What threat could they possibly pose?" The Varathi adjusted her translator. "Their technology grows faster than expected. Their history is filled with wars, yet they always rise again. They do not surrender easily. Their minds are strange. I suggest we keep watch." Laughter filled the chamber. The sleek Sarn, the arrogant Zelti, even the gentle Karth elders, everyone dismissed her. "Warning. Another wild creature in the dark," someone said. "Another noisy world that will destroy itself," another joked. The Varathi lowered her gaze. She had seen human broadcasts, music filled with emotion, art born from pain, and speeches that spoke of freedom and sacrifice. She had also seen their wars, entire cities reduced to dust, yet survivors rebuilding again and again. She knew something lived inside them, something the galaxy did not understand. Only one race in the council did not laugh. The Threx warriors, scarred and old, sat silently in their corner. Their general, a massive being with iron-gray skin, spoke in a low voice. "I have seen their eyes," he said. "In their own records, in their films, in their history, they do not fight for conquest. They fight because they refuse to kneel." But his words, too, were ignored. The council moved on to other matters, trade routes, treaties, and resource claims. The name humanity faded from their agenda like dust on the wind. Yet beyond the stars, on a small blue planet, things were changing. On Earth, humans were not aware of the laughter echoing among the stars. They dreamed of space with wonder in their eyes. Rockets carried their machines to the moon and Mars. They sent signals into the void, messages of peace, greetings in hundreds of languages, hoping someone might answer. They did not know who was listening. Some aliens saw the human signals and found them amusing, tiny creatures trying to reach the stars. Some even collected their broadcasts like toys, showing them to their children. "Look at the funny bipeds on that little blue world." But there were others, darker and more ambitious, who saw something else. The Dran Empire, hungry for expansion, marked Earth on their star maps. A world rich in water, minerals, and oxygen, a perfect prize. Still, the council did nothing. They ignored every report, every warning, and so the years passed. Humanity grew stronger, faster, more united. Wars still came, but each one taught them something new. Pain became progress. Loss became learning. When their first faster-than-light ship finally broke through the dark between stars, the galaxy barely noticed. The council believed the humans would stay small, limited, harmless. But some of the older races remembered the Varathi's trembling voice. They remembered her saying, "If ever they are wronged, if ever they are hurt, they will not break. They will burn." No one believed her. Far away in a silent laboratory, that same Varathi scientist watched the stars every night. She followed human news, their inventions, their struggles, their laughter. She had grown old, but she still believed her words would one day matter. One night, she whispered to herself, "They will come to the stars, and when they do, the galaxy will never be the same." Her assistant chuckled softly. "You still think these humans are special?" The old scientist smiled faintly. "Not special," she said, "just unstoppable." Outside her window, the galaxy glittered with peace and pride, still laughing, still blind. But somewhere on that tiny blue planet, a child looked up at the sky through a telescope and dreamed of touching the stars. The child didn't know that one day, their kind would not just touch them, they would fight among them, bleed among them, and change them forever. And when that day came, those who had laughed would remember this night, this warning, and whisper in fear, "The humans are coming." It began quietly. No one saw the Dran ships coming until they were already in orbit. They appeared above the blue world like dark clouds before a storm, massive, silent, and full of death. The Dran Empire had found Earth. To them, it was just another conquest. A small planet full of resources, weak defenses, and unorganized people. They had crushed dozens of civilizations before, and they believed this would be no different. Their commander looked down upon the planet and laughed. "They send music to the stars," he said. "We will send them silence." The first attacks came within hours. Beams of white fire tore through the skies. Cities that had glowed with light were turned into black scars. In minutes, millions were gone. Oceans boiled where the weapons struck. Satellites burned like shooting stars. The humans were not ready. They had never faced anything beyond their own world. The first moments were chaos, screams, confusion, despair. But then something changed. In the ruins of New York, a firefighter pulled survivors from the smoke. In Tokyo, soldiers stood guard over shelters. In Moscow, pilots climbed into their jets knowing they could not reach space, but they went anyway. The leaders of Earth gathered in secret bunkers and spoke only one word that echoed across every nation: fight. They had no interstellar fleets, no energy shields, no advanced weapons. But they had hearts that refused to stop. Within a week, the first human counterattack began. Small ships, old satellites, and even civilian rockets were fitted with explosives. They launched them toward the Dran ships in desperate waves. Most were destroyed before reaching orbit, but one made it. The explosion shattered part of a Dran cruiser's hull. For the first time in centuries, the Dran Empire bled. The humans sent out a message into the stars. It was simple, raw, and filled with courage. To whoever can hear this, Earth is under attack. We will not surrender. We are not your prey. The Galactic Council received the message. Delegates watched the broadcast in silence as the image of a burning Earth flickered before them. The Sarn ambassador shook his head. "Foolish creatures," he said coldly. "They should have submitted. Resistance will only bring extinction." But the Threx general, the one who had once warned them, stood and said quietly, "No, you do not understand them. They will fight until nothing is left." The council chose not to act. The humans were too far, too primitive, too small to matter. They assumed the war would be over in days. They were wrong. On Earth, the Dran continued their assault. But for every city they destroyed, the humans built another defense. They learned fast. They hacked into alien communication signals, deciphered fragments of code, and began building weapons using alien debris. A young engineer named Leah Morgan built the first railgun cannon out of scrap metal and solar power. It shot through the sky with a roar that could be heard miles away. It destroyed a Dran scout ship and gave humanity its first real victory. People cheered in broken streets waving flags made from torn cloth. For the first time since the invasion began, there was hope. Even children helped. They carried water, patched wounds, whispered courage to the weary soldiers. Humanity had found something stronger than fear: unity. In space, the Dran commanders grew frustrated. "Why do they keep fighting?" one asked. They should have given up by now. The Dran had conquered countless worlds, but none had fought like this. Most surrendered after their first defeat. The humans, however, grew stronger after every loss. "They do not fight for power," another commander said bitterly. "They fight because they believe they still have something to save." The Dran tried to crush that belief. They bombed the cities again and again. But even in the ashes, resistance grew. Soldiers who had lost everything picked up rifles made from old pipes. Pilots flew suicide missions, ramming their aircraft into enemy ships with their last breath. Every fallen human became a reason for another to rise. Months passed, and still the humans held the line. Their weapons were crude, their fleets small, but their hearts were made of fire. The Galactic Council watched in disbelief. Reports came in from every corner of the Dran Empire. Human resistance stronger than expected. Dran losses higher than projected. Earth still not conquered. The laughter in the council chambers was gone now. The Varathi scientist, old and weary, sat watching the reports with tears in her eyes. "I told you," she whispered. "They will not break." Finally, after nearly a year, the impossible happened. The humans destroyed a Dran capital ship. They had learned how to mimic the enemy's technology and turn it against them. The explosion lit up the night sky. Across the world, people looked up and saw a burning trail in the heavens. To the Dran, it was a humiliation. To the humans, it was a promise. The war was far from over, but now, the galaxy was watching. And somewhere among the distant stars, the first whispers began to spread. Perhaps the humans are not prey after all. The war that was supposed to last a few weeks had now stretched into 2 long, terrible years. The Dran Empire, once proud and unstoppable, was bleeding. And the humans, those primitive creatures we know, were the ones making them bleed. At first, the galaxy refused to believe the reports. The Council called them exaggerations, lies, or mistakes. How could a single planet with no empire and no fleets stand against the Dran war machine? But the evidence kept coming. Dran patrols went missing, outposts destroyed, fleets ambushed in systems that humans were never supposed to reach. Something had changed. The humans had learned. They studied every fragment of wreckage, every captured ship, every fallen enemy. Engineers worked in underground bases lit by flickering lights, rebuilding alien weapons with human hands. Pilots trained in secret hangars, flying ships cobbled together from metal and hope. Their leaders called it the Iron Dawn. Humanity had united in a way it never had before. No more nations, no more borders, just one species, fighting together for survival. In the dark void of space, the first Terran fleet was born. It was not elegant. The ships were rough, welded from the skeletons of old satellites and captured Dran cruisers. But they worked. They could fly, fight, and strike back. When the fleet launched from Earth, people across the planet watched through shattered windows and dusty screens. Children pointed at the sky, whispering, "They're going to fight for us." And for the first time in the galaxy's long history, the Dran Empire began to lose ground. The first major victory came at the Battle of Ceres. The Dran had set up a fortress on the dwarf planet to block human ships from leaving the solar system. Captain Elias Ward led the human counterattack. His fleet was smaller, slower, and badly armed, but he had something the Dran didn't: courage that refused to die. As the Dran ships closed in, Ward sent a final message to Earth. "If we fall today, tell our children we went fighting toward the stars." The battle lasted for 17 hours. When it ended, the sky above Ceres burned red with wreckage, but the human flag still stood. The Dran fortress was gone. That victory echoed across the galaxy like thunder. The Council could no longer ignore it. The same ambassadors who had once laughed now spoke in fear. "The humans are spreading," said the Sarn leader, his crystalline face cracking under stress. "They are building ships faster than we thought possible." "They have turned every loss into strength," murmured the Varathi scientist. Every fallen city became a forge. Every tear became steel. The Threx general stood with quiet pride. "I warned you. You all thought they were weak, but weakness was their greatest weapon. It made them adapt." Still, the Council hesitated to help. They feared both sides. If the Dran won, the humans would be destroyed. But if the humans won, what would stop them then? Meanwhile, in the ruins of Earth's old cities, hope had become a flame that no darkness could kill. Families rebuilt homes beneath the ashes. Children played beside the burned remains of starships. Soldiers told stories of lost friends, of victories that cost everything but meant even more. Leah Morgan, the engineer who had built the first railgun, now stood aboard a human cruiser named Hope's Edge. When asked what kept her going, she said quietly, "Because if we stop fighting, then everything we love dies. We fight not to conquer, but to remember who we are." Her words spread like fire through the fleet. The Dran began to panic. They had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy who smiled through blood, who turned defeat into determination. They tried diplomacy, sending messages offering peace in exchange for surrender. But the humans refused. One human commander replied with a simple sentence: "We do not surrender. Ever." That message was recorded, translated, and repeated across 100 worlds. To many it became a song of courage. To the Dran, it became a warning of their coming end. Finally, after months of battles, the humans did the unthinkable. They reached the Dran's own colonies. For the first time in their empire's long history, the Dran saw enemy ships in their skies. The Terran fleet bombarded their military stations, not for revenge, but to end the war once and for all. When the Dran flagship was destroyed, the explosion could be seen from orbit like a new sunrise. Human soldiers stood in silence. Some cheered, some cried, but most simply looked at the stars, tired, wounded, but unbroken. When news of the Dran defeat reached the Galactic Council, there was no laughter. No one called them primitive anymore. The Varathi scientist looked out her window at the night sky and whispered, "They have changed everything." The Threx general nodded. "No," he said softly. "They have reminded us what strength really means." Across the galaxy, the once laughed-at species now stood as a symbol of defiance. Humanity had not just survived, they had risen. And though the fires of war still burned, the universe now spoke one truth in quiet, trembling voices: the humans are coming, and they will never bow. The war was finally over. The mighty Dran Empire, the terror of 100 worlds, was gone. Their fleets lay broken in orbit, their cities silent, their banners torn apart by fire and time. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Half of Earth's surface lay in ruins. The oceans were scarred with wreckage, and the skies still carried the smoke of battle. Yet somehow humanity stood tall. They had done what no one believed possible. They had survived and won. Across the galaxy, stories spread like wildfire. People spoke of human soldiers who refused to fall, of engineers who turned scrap into miracles, of a species that rose from ashes again and again. Some called them heroes. Others whispered a different word: monsters. The Galactic Council could not stay silent any longer. Inside the grand chamber, light from 1,000 stars shimmered through crystal walls. Every seat was filled. The Sarn, the Varathi, the Threx, the Karth, the Zelti, everyone had come. The topic was clear: humanity. The Sarn leader spoke first, his tone sharp and proud. "They destroyed an empire," he said. "They used weapons made from alien corpses. They show no mercy. Are we to welcome such savages?" The Karth elder, wise and calm, replied softly, "Savages do not weep for their enemies. The humans mourn the Dran. That is not cruelty, it is sorrow." "But sorrow can turn to power," hissed the Sarn, "and power corrupts." The Varathi scientist, now old and frail, stood trembling beside her seat. "I warned you all years ago," she said. "I told you they were dangerous. But I also told you they were more than that. You laughed at me. You laughed at them. And now you owe them your respect." A deep silence followed her words. Even the Sarn had no reply. Then the doors of the council chamber opened. A group of humans entered. At their head walked Captain Mara Holt, the commander of the Terran fleet, the woman who had led the final assault on the Dran homeworld. She wore a dark uniform patched and faded from battle. Her right arm was mechanical, a reminder of the price of victory. The air seemed to tighten as every alien eye turned toward her, some with curiosity, some with fear. Mara stopped in the center of the hall. Her translator hummed softly as she began to speak. "You called us dangerous," she said quietly. "You called us reckless, violent, unpredictable. You were right." Her words shocked the chamber, but then she lifted her head, her eyes burning like twin suns. "We are dangerous. To those who bring war, to those who destroy without reason. But we are also builders. We are dreamers. We are the voice of a world that refuses to die." She paused, letting her words echo through the hall. "When the Dran came, you all watched. You said we would fall. You waited for our fire to fade. But when the sky burned, we stood together. We fought for our planet, for our children, for every innocent life. Not just human life, all life." Her voice softened, almost breaking. "We did not want this war. But when it came, we chose to fight. Not for glory, but for survival. And now we stand here, not as conquerors, but as equals." The Threx general, a giant among his kind, rose slowly and saluted her. "You have my respect, Captain Holt," he said in his deep voice. "You fought like a warrior born from the stars." Others murmured in agreement. Even the proud Sarn lowered their heads, unwilling to meet her gaze. After a long pause, the council voted. The result was clear. Humanity would be recognized as a full member of the Galactic Alliance. For the first time, the flag of Earth rose among the banners of the stars, but even in celebration, a quiet unease remained. As the meeting ended, the Sarn leader turned to the Karth elder and whispered, "You have seen what they can do when they are attacked. Imagine what they could do if they ever decided to rule." The elder closed his eyes. "Then we must pray," he said softly, "that they never lose their hearts." Later, in her ship, Captain Holt stood by the window and looked down at Earth. Broken, beautiful, alive, she whispered to herself. "We did it. But we cannot stop here. We must rebuild not just our world, but our place among the stars." Her second-in-command, a young pilot, asked, "Do you think they'll ever trust us?" Mara smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but they'll remember what we are. And that's enough." Far above, in the silent dark, the stars shimmered gently, each one carrying the memory of the war, of the fire that had burned so bright it could never be forgotten. The galaxy now knew the truth. The humans were no longer the ones who dreamed of the stars. They had become the reason. The stars feared to dream. 20 years passed. The galaxy had changed. Humanity was no longer a forgotten species at the edge of the stars. They had colonies, trade routes, and seats in the Galactic Council. Their ships patrolled the outer systems. Their scientists worked side by side with alien minds, and their engineers built wonders once thought impossible. For a time, there was peace. The wounds of the Drown War began to heal. Worlds rebuilt, alliances strengthened, and the name Terran became a symbol of courage and endurance. But peace, as always, never lasts. The first signs came quietly. A mining station in the Lorne Belt went dark. Then a colony near the Nebra Gate stopped responding. At first, everyone thought it was just communication failure. Then came the screams. Survivors from the outer worlds arrived in broken ships, their eyes filled with terror. They spoke of creatures, shadows with teeth and wings of metal, things that consumed everything they touched. They called them the Vexar Swarm. The Vexar did not conquer. They devoured. Planets, fleets, even moons, everything was stripped away, left empty and dead. Their ships were alive, pulsing with strange light. Their only purpose was to feed. When the Council received the reports, panic filled the chamber. Worlds began fortifying themselves. Empires prepared fleets. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was united by fear. And then someone asked the question everyone was thinking. Where are the humans? On Earth, things were different. After the Drown War, humanity had turned inward, tired of blood and loss. They had built gardens over old battlefields, monuments for every fallen soldier. Many hoped never to fight again, but when the Vexar appeared, the Council sent a message to Sol begging for help. At first, there was silence. Then one night, the stars near Earth began to flare. Massive ships emerged from hyperspace, black, sharp, and glowing with blue light. The Terran fleet had returned. Every ship carried the same words engraved on its hull. We remember. The humans did not come for glory. They came because they understood what others had forgotten. Evil never sleeps. Captain Mara Holt, now an admiral, stood on the bridge of the flagship Erebus. Her hair had turned silver, her eyes still hard as steel. She looked at the message from the Council and simply said, "We fought for our survival once. We will fight for theirs now." When the Terran fleet arrived at the first Vexar-invaded world, it was already too late. The planet was gone, stripped bare like a corpse, but the humans did not turn away. They searched the ruins for survivors, for clues, for any way to fight back. Their scientists studied the remains of the Vexar. Their engineers built new weapons, energy cannons, plasma lances, and warheads designed to burn through the living metal of the swarm. Soon, the first battle began. The humans fought with precision, strategy, and fire. Every ship moved like it was part of one heartbeat. The Vexar were many, but the humans were fierce. When one Terran destroyer was surrounded, its captain refused to retreat. He sent a message to his crew, "If we fall here, make it count." The destroyer exploded in a burst of light so bright it tore through half the enemy fleet. The sacrifice saved thousands. Across the stars, other species watched in awe. Once again, it was humanity, the same fragile beings they had mocked, who stood in front of the storm. In the Galactic Council, ambassadors listened to reports of human bravery. The Sarn leader, once full of pride, whispered, "They fight for worlds not their own. Why?" The Threx general answered, "Because they remember what it means to be alone." Indeed, the humans fought for everyone. The Karth, the Vorathi, the Sarn, and even the Threx. They evacuated alien civilians before defending their planets. They risked their own lives for strangers. Their message spread like light through the darkness. We fight for all. But the Vexar were endless. For every swarm destroyed, another appeared. The war turned into a nightmare. Whole sectors burned. Millions died. Hope began to fade once more. Even the mighty Terran fleet began to struggle. Supplies ran low.
Ships were lost.
Some thought this would be the end. that not even the humans could stand forever. Yet even then they did not stop. One battle near the rim lasted for 6 days. When the human flagship was struck, Admiral Holt stood among the flames and shouted, "As long as one of us lives, humanity fights on." Her voice was recorded and sent across the galaxy. It became a symbol of courage. Entire worlds rallied behind her words. And slowly things began to change. For the first time, the galaxy truly stood as one. Humans fought beside Threx warriors. Sarn scientists worked with Terran engineers. Even the quiet Varathi sent their fleets to help. All of them united under one banner, the Terran Standard. The humans had done the impossible again. They had not just fought back. They had taught the galaxy how to stand together. As the war raged on, Captain Holt looked out into the stars and whispered to herself, "Maybe this is what we were meant to do. Not to conquer, not to rule, but to remind the universe what courage really means." And in that moment she smiled faintly, because even in the endless dark, humanity's fire still burned. It had burned through fear, it had burned through pain, and it would burn through the Vexar, until nothing was left but light. The war had dragged on for years. Stars that once shone bright were now cold ashes in the void. Entire systems had fallen silent. Every race in the galaxy had lost someone somewhere. But no one had lost as much as the humans. Their ships fought on every front. Their soldiers bled on every world. And yet they never stopped. The galaxy began to call them the Fireborn, for wherever humans fought, there was always fire, burning against the darkness. Admiral Mara Holt stood in the command deck of the Erebus, staring at the holographic map of the front lines. Red marks blinked where planets had fallen, blue where humanity still stood. The red spread like a disease. Her voice was calm but heavy when she spoke. "How long before the swarm reaches the core worlds?" 18 days, her officer replied quietly. 18 days before everything was gone. In the lower decks of the Erebus, the soldiers prepared. Some polished their weapons, others stared silently at old photos. There were no speeches now, no cheers, only quiet understanding. A young Marine named Leo sat beside the viewport, looking at the stars. He was barely 20. Beside him sat Sergeant Kara, a veteran of the Dran War. "You scared?" Leo asked. Kara smiled sadly. "Always. But fear keeps us human." Leo looked out again. "Do you think we'll win?" Kara's gaze softened. "Winning doesn't always mean surviving. Sometimes it means making sure others do." Her words stayed with him. When the next battle came, it was the largest one yet. The humans and their allies gathered near the Morn Rift, where the Vexar were swarming through in countless numbers. Hundreds of fleets assembled, ships from every world, banners from every race. But in the center of them all stood the Terran fleet. Their hulls were scarred, their guns battered, but they still moved with purpose. As the Vexar arrived, the void filled with light. It was not just a battle. It was a storm of fire and steel. The Vexar ships came like waves, endless and hungry. Plasma burned through the darkness, explosions tore through the silence. The Erebus shook under the impact, alarms screamed, but no one moved from their posts. Admiral Holt gave her orders firmly. "Hold the line. Every second we stand gives them a chance to escape." The galaxy watched in horror and awe. Transmission feeds from the battle were sent everywhere, on alien worlds, in space stations, in cities full of refugees. They saw humans standing firm when all seemed lost. They saw destroyers ram into Vexar carriers just to buy more time. They saw soldiers on the ground fighting with broken weapons, refusing to fall. A Threx commander watching the feed whispered to his aide, "They don't fight like us. They fight like they have nothing left to lose," and he was right. Humanity had lost too much to fear death anymore. By the 4th day, the Allied fleets were collapsing. Thousands of ships were gone. The command channels were chaos, but the Erebus still fought. When its main engines failed, Holt ordered power rerouted to the weapons. When the shields dropped, she stood on the bridge with calm defiance. A message came from the Council. "Retreat. Save yourselves. The war is lost." Holt read the message, then deleted it. She turned to her crew. "If we run now, the galaxy dies. We are the wall between life and extinction. Hold the line." The crew roared back, voices shaking the deck. "For Earth. For everyone." The Erebus fired until its guns melted. Human ships surrounded it like a dying sun, blazing even as they fell. On the planet below, Leo and Kara fought side by side, defending the last evacuation ships. The sky burned red with plasma fire. A Vexar creature crashed down before them, a towering beast of metal and bone. Kara shot until her rifle clicked empty, then pulled her combat knife and charged. Leo shouted after her, but she was already gone, lost in the explosion that followed. Tears blurred his eyes, but he didn't stop. He picked up her fallen banner and kept fighting, one man against the monsters. When his strength finally failed, he whispered to the wind, "Tell them we didn't run." Hours later, when the battle ended, the rift was gone. The Erebus had detonated its core, collapsing the Vexar gateway and sealing the swarm behind it. The explosion lit up the stars for thousands of light years. The humans had won, but at a terrible cost. The Erebus, along with every ship in its fleet, was gone. Admiral Holt's last transmission was found in the static. "If you hear this, remember us. Remember that we stood. Remember that humanity never stopped fighting." Silence followed. In the days that came, the galaxy mourned. Monuments rose on every world. Statues of human soldiers holding their banners high were built beside alien heroes. The Council declared a universal day of remembrance. The Threx called it the Day of Fire. The Sarn named it the Last Stand. But the humans had no need for names. For them, it was simply the day they kept their promise. They had stood when all others would have fallen, and somewhere in the deep, dark space, among the ashes of the Erebus, a faint blue light still glowed. The fire of humanity, small, distant, but still burning. The war was over. The Vexar swarm was gone, sealed beyond the rift, trapped forever in the empty dark. But the cost was greater than anyone had imagined. Whole sectors lay in ruins. Entire worlds had vanished. And the Terran fleet, the humans who had fought until the very end, was silent. No signal, no survivors, no ships returning home. The galaxy waited. Days passed, then weeks. Still no message came. Only the cold echo of space remained. At first, the Council tried to celebrate the victory. Speeches were made, banners raised, but every word felt hollow, because everyone knew this victory belonged to those who never came back. It belonged to the humans. On the planet Vera, a small colony of survivors gathered around a memorial stone. The plaque read, "Here stand the names of those who burned so others could live." Around it, hundreds of aliens knelt, Sarn, Threx, Vurathi, and others. Many had fought beside humans, and all of them carried stories of what they had seen. A Threx soldier placed a small Terran flag on the stone. His claws trembled as he whispered, "They saved my world. I owe them my life." A Sarn child tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mama," she asked softly, "why did the humans fight for us? We were not their people." Her mother looked at the sky, eyes shining with tears. "Because that's what they are, little one. They fight for everyone." Across the stars, new songs were written, songs of the humans who came like fire and stood against the endless dark. The galaxy, once divided by greed and pride, now shared a single memory, the day when fragile humans became legends. The Council of Worlds gathered in their great chamber once more. The last time they had sat there, fear had ruled them. Now silence filled the room as they looked upon an empty chair, the seat once meant for Earth's representative. The Sarn Chancellor rose. His voice shook slightly as he spoke. "We laughed at them once. We called them reckless, primitive, emotional. But when death came for us, they stood where we could not." He looked at the empty chair. "Let this seat remain empty, not as a sign of loss, but of respect. For no voice could ever speak as theirs did." Every race in the chamber bowed their heads. From that day onward, humanity's place in the Council remained forever unfilled. The humans were gone, but never forgotten. Years passed. Life began to return to the galaxy. The scars of war slowly healed and the stars grew bright again. But the memory of the Terrans lingered like a light in every heart. Children learned their history in school, of how the humans came from a light dio, small blue world called Earth, how they once walked among giants and yet never bowed. Statues of Terran soldiers stood on alien worlds, some smiling, some holding weapons, some simply looking toward the stars. On each statue the same words were carved, "We remember." One day, far beyond the old battle lines, a small research vessel picked up a faint signal. It was weak, almost lost in static, but unmistakable, a human distress beacon. The crew couldn't believe it. They followed the signal to a dead system where the stars had burned out long ago. There, floating in silence, they found a single Terran escape pod. Ancient, scorched, but still intact. Inside was a single human, in cryosleep. The markings on her suit read, Erebus Command. It was Admiral Mara Holt. When they brought her back, the galaxy wept. She was old, her body frail, but her eyes still burned with the same fire. The council gathered once more to meet her. The Sarn Chancellor bowed deeply and said, Admiral Holt, you and your people have given us more than life. You gave us unity, she smiled faintly. We didn't give you unity, she said softly. We reminded you how to find it. Then she looked at the sea of alien faces, so many different shapes, colors, and voices, and whispered, Promise me one thing. Never forget why we fought. And they promised. Every world, every race, every being in that hall swore to keep humanity's memory alive. After Admiral Holt passed away, her ship, the Erebus, was rebuilt as a monument. It floated in orbit around the rebuilt Earth, now silent and peaceful once more. People from every corner of the galaxy came to see it. They walked its halls, read its inscriptions, and left behind flowers, flags, and whispers of gratitude. And every night, when the stars reflected off its hull, the ship looked like it was still alive, still watching over the galaxy it had saved. Centuries later, travelers would still speak of the humans. They would say, once there was a race from a small blue world. They were fragile and flawed, yet their hearts burned brighter than any sun. They fought when all others fell, and in their final breath they gave the galaxy hope. And then, in quiet reverence, they would add, they warned us once. We didn't listen. But when the war came, they showed us the truth. Far out in the void, where no world shines and no life stirs, a faint blue spark still drifts, the last echo of a human ship, carrying a single message that never stops repeating. We are humanity. We stood against the dark, and we are still here.